Hi, PerspectiveWeather.com meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Thursday, December 5th. Well, quite an interesting weather pattern setting up for next week. We kind of have a topsy-turvy temperature pattern going forward into the middle part of next week with much milder conditions coming to the mid-Atlantic region, the northeast U.S. for Monday and Tuesday, albeit on the wet side both days. And then a very cold air mass arrives by the middle part of next week and towards the end of next week, or perhaps into the subsequent weekend. We'll have to monitor a lot of moisture down across the deep south to see if it tries to take a turn up to the north and east and run into this cold air mass at the end of next week or the following weekend. So before we get to that, we'll have some moderately cold conditions today and tomorrow. Another cold front comes through tomorrow night. That ushers in another chilly air mass for much of the weekend. But again, will turn much milder on Monday and Tuesday, only to turn colder again by the middle part of next week. Let's start off by looking at a satellite imagery loop I found on Twitter showing the storm over the eastern part of the Pacific Ocean. Quite an interesting storm here, showing up quite well in satellite imagery, and this is going to be another big storm, big news event for California over coming days. There's a circulation associated with it. That will slam into California over the next couple of days, produce more heavy rain along coastal sections and more inland snows in the higher elevations of the Sierra Nevada. Well, before we walk through the surface forecast maps from last night's Zero-Z GFS model run, let's look at the Ensemble run in terms of the 5-day averages for 850 millibar temperature anomalies. Kind of tells the story about what's going on here. This is the forecast map for the current 5-day period. And again, we'll have moderately cold conditions today and tomorrow. A little bit colder than that on Saturday. Then Sunday's kind of a transition day. Not quite as cold as Saturday, and then much milder on Monday and Tuesday. So basically ends up overall relatively close to normal in much of the mid-Atlantic region over the next 5-day period. But let's now jump to days 6 to 10 and take a look at this. This is days 6 to 10, which runs from December 10th to December 15th, basically next week. Again, we have a very cold air mass coming from central Canada into the central and eastern U.S. by the middle part of next week. Wednesday, Thursday, probably the coldest core of the air will be over the Midwest, the Great Lakes, into the northeast U.S., and this is that 5-day period. And once the cold gets in, it'll be kind of slow to pull out. We may have a lot of moisture we'll have to worry about down in the deep south that will perhaps start to push to the north and east at the end of next week into the following weekend. And again, we'll have lots of cold air around, so it may be an interesting setup in about a week to 10 days or so. Finally, this is going out even farther into time, days 11 to 15. Again, this is the Ensemble run of the GFS from 6Z. This happens to be days 11 to 15, which runs from December 15th to December 20th. And as I just mentioned, once that cold air gets established, it'll be kind of slow to give up its ground, reluctant to give up its ground. We'll see in a moment on the surface forecast maps. These cold air masses coming by the middle part of next week will be anchored by very strong high pressure and a couple different high pressure systems. That may extend the longevity of the cold air in the eastern part of the U.S. So this is going all the way out into the middle part of the month. So again, the big news in terms of temperatures, much milder for Monday and Tuesday. That will be rather short-lived, however. That warm-up on Monday and Tuesday, and both days will feature some showers. And we turn much colder again by the middle of next week. It looks like it stays relatively cold right through the remainder of next week. Well, let's now walk through last night's Zero-Z GFS model run over the next several days. We'll point out some of the interesting possibilities for the latter part of next week. First of all, winds will pick up shortly in the mid-Atlantic region. Not too windy this morning, early this morning, but over the next couple of hours as the sun starts to heat up the lower part of the atmosphere, the winds will pick up noticeably out of the northwest, and they could gust to 25 or 30 miles per hour during the midday and afternoon hours in the D.C., Philadelphia, New York City corridor out of the northwest. That will tend to limit high temperatures today. Only It dropped into the mid-30s in many suburban locations in southeastern Pennsylvania, but won't go up much either. Probably the lower to mid-40s for highs during the afternoon. And again, a stiff northwest wind will develop. Those winds will quickly die down overnight tonight as high pressure moves close to the mid-Atlantic region. Again, after midnight, winds will be relatively calm in the I-95 corridor region. Moderately cold tomorrow, and then another frontal system approaches. Perhaps on the dry side, there may be a rain or snow shower late tomorrow evening as this next front comes in. And by Saturday, we'll be under the influence here in the Mid-Atlantic region of another cold, high-pressure system. Perhaps confining temperatures to the 30s for highs in Philadelphia, New York City, D.C. maybe 40 to 43 degrees or so. That high, however, starts to shift off the coast by Sunday morning. Here we go. Look at this broad flow of air coming out of the southwest towards the northeast on the backside of this high by Sunday. That'll warm things up first in the Ohio Valley and the Midwest on Sunday, but not until Monday does it arrive here in the east. And here we go. On Monday, broad southwesterly flow of air between that departed high pressure system and low pressure out in the middle of the country, and we'll jump to the 50s for Monday and Tuesday. Again, perhaps the warmest days we've had in a while, and perhaps the warmest days we'll have for another several days, because it turns much colder by the middle part of next week. Showers a threat on both Monday and Tuesday. Let's keep moving forward here and watch what happens here. Here we go. By Tuesday morning, showers, maybe some decent rainfall on Tuesday ahead of the next strong cold frontal system. Look at out here in the northern plains. We have a very tight pressure gradient between strong high pressure, Canadian high over the Montana-Canadian border, low pressure over the Great Lakes come Tuesday morning. And again, still warm on Tuesday, perhaps pushing 60 degrees for highs on Tuesday afternoon in Philly, New York City, D.C. But then the rug falls out. The temperatures will drop sharply by Wednesday as this strong cold front shown right here in this isobar pattern here by Tuesday night comes through by Tuesday night, paves the way for a very chilly air mass here by Wednesday. We'll be no better than the 30s on Wednesday. It will be a stiff northwest wind here in the Mid-Atlantic region. And then watch what happens here. This is when it gets kind of interesting. That frontal system tends to stall out. You can see kind of some signs of the frontal system down here along the southeast U.S. coastline by Thursday of next week. And yet another cold high pressure system drops into the northern plains. That's what I was talking about. Once the cold air arrives, it may be reluctant to give up its ground because we have multiple cold air masses that are anchored by strong high pressure. And here we see some moisture starting to gather together here. And we'll have to watch this scenario here with a stalled down frontal system, perhaps a reinforcing shot of cold air. And here we are next Friday. We'll have to watch this potential moisture pulling out of the southern states and running to the northeast into the cold air. So we're still in the speculation stage, certainly, but there's some signs for a possible interesting pattern setting up. Again, this is more than a week away, maybe next Friday, Saturday time frame we're talking about here. But again, topsy-turvy temperature pattern over the next several days with much milder conditions on Monday and Tuesday, then turns much colder again for Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And at the end of next week, perhaps into the following weekend, we'll have to watch for the possibility of moisture pulling out of the south and heading to the northeast into that cold air mass. That's it for now for PerspectiveWeather.com. I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.